This is Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God, those moments when heaven and earth collide and the miraculous happens and God reveals that he's right here, right now. I am your host, Trapper Jack.
Just before she passed, she looked in the corner of the room and her eyes got huge and her pupils were super dilated. And I got in front of her face like, Mom, what are you looking at, Mom? Like that. And I'm kind of in her face, but she like right through me. Like she couldn't even see my face. She was going through me.
A little glimpse of heaven in this episode with the help of 3 dads, 1 mom, and Steve Jobs. Interesting what God allows us to experience and when, what he allows us to see and when. I used to talk during the Blind Faith Live podcast series about cause and effect. You do A and B automatically happens. Take a step towards God, something's going to happen. Say you're sorry to him, step away from ego, make some moves in his direction, and he will respond. It's automatic. And so I remember going through this examination of conscience and saying I was sorry for my sins and trying to be a better dad, a better husband, a better coworker, and things started happening. I started getting experiences. One of the real beaut happened when I was downstairs and I was working out. This incredibly fit, muscular body. Picture a young Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't look like him, but just picture a young Arnold Schwarzenegger. Okay, I'm done with that. Okay, so I'm looking in the mirror. and I see my body split long ways, and my head is open, and black smoke is just pouring out of it. It's like, whoa. Had it been white smoke, I'd immediately been proclaimed Pope. But no, I didn't get that. So I got this black smoke, which was God's way of saying, you're getting rid of some of that stuff. You're getting rid of some of that ego. You're coming along. Just keep coming. And it fortified me, and it made me want more and to experience more of God. And then several months later, this legally blind guy got his vision back for a minute. It probably wasn't even that long, but I think time kind of stood still. And it happened in the middle of the night, getting up at 2:30 in the morning in a pitch black room, and I haven't been able to see in the dark since I was 13, and I'm getting up, and bam, I see everything. The room, I can still see it now, that I can look at the dresser and see the grain of the wood. I can look at an area rug and I can see all the different fibers and the different colors. And I can see everything in the room in a pitch black room. Not a chance I was still sleeping and dreaming. I was awake. You know when you're awake, right? You know when you're awake. And it was just, like I say, maybe a minute, probably not even that long. But it's frozen in time, this incredible experience I had. But once again, God's way of saying, keep coming, keep changing, keep turning towards me, keep picking up that cross and follow me. Incredible experiences. So on this program today, we're going to be talking about these touched by heaven moments, of course, but one of my guests is Gary Anderson. Gary has an internet show. It's a paranormal show. It's called Night Dreams Talk Radio. I was on a show a little while back, and we talked about these touched by heaven moments that we have on this program, and we talk a little paranormal and stuff. But Gary told a story about transformation. I want you to hear first. Here's Gary Anderson.
I'll be honest with you. I have bone cancer. They wanted to amputate my legs years ago. Well, I refused to go and have my legs amputated. I rode a motorcycle all my life. You know what I did? I focused on certain things. One was to keep riding my motorcycle. I stayed focused on stuff. I opened up more, being more caring to my wife, my family, and my feelings more than ever. Well, you know what? The cancer is still there, but it hasn't spread. Okay, there's my good days and my bad days, but I go to the doctor and they're shocked every time. They go, we don't understand this. It all has, I really think, to do with how you focus on things in life.
But look at what your main focus was. The biggest thing you did, Gary, is you went to love. You made a step. You took a step more towards caring and love, and I think that was your key there.
They told me if I don't have my legs amputated, I was going to die. Simple as that. And it's going to be a horrible, painful death. And, I sat and I went home that night. And honestly, I laid in bed that night and I saw my whole life. I mean, from a little kid at like probably 3 years old, all the way up, all the bad things I've ever done, all the good things I ever done. And all of it, it was just like a movie. I'm not joking. And I woke up and got out of bed that next morning, my whole life was changed.
That is called examination of conscience.
It sure was. I realized I was a big jerk when I was young. I realized I was a big butthole. And I've done my very best to not be that way. I sometimes regress. We all do. But then I realize I'm regressing, and I go back and I, try to change what I'm doing wrong.
Gary, this is a great lesson. I hope everyone's listening to this, because I've met so many people like you that once they found love, once they had that examination of conscience, they repent and all that, weird word stuff. But it's true. You had the examination of conscience. You saw the faults. You were sorry for them. You turned to love. Guess what? Guess what God's going to do? He's going to heal you. He's going to, and it doesn't mean he heals you forever. I mean, everyone Jesus healed died. Okay. So it doesn't last forever. But the point is that you've been given this incredible sign and an extension of your life because of what you did. And can I ask you one thing? Let me ask you something, and be honest about this. Okay. Would you call yourself a forgiving person now?
I do. And before that, I wasn't. I would hold a grudge really bad.
The Bible says it. And I have experienced this 100 times over, of people who were stymied in their healing until they forgave. And I'm listening to your story, Gary. I'm so glad we're talking, because look at what you did. Examination of conscience. No, seriously, look what you did. Examination of conscience. You said, I'm sorry. You went from a not forgiving state to a forgiving state.
I think after the second day of finding out I had the problem, it didn't bother me anymore. It didn't. Nice. I wasn't scared of it. Nice. I embrace it. I take each day as it comes. I don't worry about tomorrow. But you know what? I come to the conclusion again. I'm not a very religious person. I was never told what church to go to. They let me choose my own church. I was a kid. I went to church. I did stop going to church when I became an adult. But I believe in God, and I think that's very important. And, I just feel that I treat people probably too well from sometimes, because when you treat people too much, it can come back to bite you sometimes. But I always believe and put my trust into people, and I give everybody 100%. I never used to be that way.
No, you're doing it the right way, Gary. You're doing it the right way. You're too nice to a fault. Okay, so what?
But you know what? I found out in the 80s, I developed a computer device, which I lost my money, but it made me a multimillionaire for a while. A very multimillionaire. But you know what? It didn't, I found when I had a lot of money, I was not happy. I was miserable, actually, because I wanted more. I didn't care about you, or I didn't care about my wife's feelings. I worked all the time. I worked 14, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week for a couple years straight. I only cared about one thing: myself and money. And you know what, too? After I lost everything, and then I found out about my other issue, money doesn't really mean anything to me. My family does. You do. What I do on my show, and my Harley. What can I say?
My Harley. I love that. Wow. I would say that's a heck of a transformation you've gone through. A heck of a transformation. And God's blessing you for it. He's blessing you for it.
I would be dead right now if he didn't want me around. So I figure I'm here for some reason.
Wow. What a great story, huh? Great story of transformation from Gary Anderson. Let's get into these glimpses of heaven now, these touched by heaven moments. Here again, Gary Anderson.
Well, my father had dementia. He also had Alzheimer's. And the last year of his life, he was nothing more than a vegetable. I mean, and all of a sudden I get a phone call from the doctor saying, your dad is totally coherent. Come to the nursing home. And, I was shocked because they told me he was virtually at that point almost brain dead. I mean, he wasn't talking to anybody. He didn't recognize anybody, nothing. I walked into the room they had him in, and he recognized me. He asked me how my work was going. We had a long conversation. I mean, he was sharp as could be. And then out of the blue, he started talking about, I was just talking to your mom and she's waiting for me. And I said, okay. My mom was passed on about 5 years before he did. And then he started talking about his brother and then his, my uncles and all that stuff. And, we talked for a while and then he says, well, it's time for you to go home. I'm going to die. And, the doctor said, maybe it is time for me to go. By the time I got home, he already passed on. And, they couldn't figure out how he went from a vegetable state to totally coherent. I mean, he's like, he was telling me stories about, heaven, about my mom, how happy my mom is because she's with her brothers. It was shocking. And it was just the whole thing. It kind of opened my eyes up quite a bit about paranormal, even more.
Yeah. But, if you talk to doctors and nurses who are around this a lot or hospice, that is not unusual what you experienced and your father experienced. That's not unusual. It's like they're given a last goodbye where suddenly they come out of whatever they were in, they're allowed to say goodbye to everybody, and then they're gone. My dad, the last time I saw him, he had dementia. And so, he didn't really know us anymore. He knew my mom, but the rest of us were kind of fuzzy. And my real name is Philip. And so he didn't know who I was, right? But we're at this Thanksgiving gathering, and he looked at me, kind of crossed his arms and goes, "Hello, Philip." And I'm just kind of like, "Whoa, where are you? Where'd you just come from?" It lasted that long. It was just that long. And that was kind of like his goodbye for me. It wasn't too long after that, that he passed away.
Good morning, Trapper.
How are we? This is Janet Pierce. She and I used to work together in radio. She was in sales. I was on air. She told me a story about 5 years ago. I want her to tell you. It has to do with her dad and mom. And it's about the touch by heaven moment has to do with how God tells us he's right here, right now. And that this we're experiencing right now isn't it. This is just a preliminary for something pretty darn amazing. And not to be afraid. And just not to be afraid. And how he goes about doing this, I mean, he leaves no doubt. There should be no doubt with this same experience repeating itself over and over again with so many people that God is here.
But 5 years ago, my dad was passing away on my birthday, actually, which is March 22nd. And, it was just a bizarre day because he knew he was passing. We knew he was passing. I was supposed to be having a party over in the east side of Cleveland with about 50 cousins who had planned that, and we had to cancel that. So 2 cousins came over instead and brought presents, And so my dad is in one room in his assisted living place. We're in a, quote, living room area in the same apartment area, and hospice is in. And so people are taking turns, like, talking to my dad. And he's smiling and laughing. It was hysterical, like bizarre for someone passing away. Because up to that point, he'd been pretty like in passing away mode. So at one point, I have presents on my lap, and Catherine and Lori are in with my dad, and they come running in. And they said, "Your mom's in the room." And I'm like, "She is?" And I go, "What do you mean?" And I go, "Your dad is having a conversation with your mom, but I have presents on my lap. I can't get in there." I go, "Go ahead. You'll go back, And so I try to get in there. And
how long ago had your mom passed?
She passed in 2001.
Oh, long ago.
Right shortly after 9/11. So I've been, my dad's caregiver for many, many years, and we were buddy pals anyway, and so he came to live with me. And the last couple years of his life, and then various things went wrong, and he just missed my mom every day till the day he died. He missed her, and he was looking up into the right corner of the room, and according to my friends, having a conversation with her back and forth. They didn't actually ever tell me exactly what they were conversing about, but my friend Lori, actually spoke to the corner and told my mom that it was going to be okay, that they were going to take care of me, and it was okay that, that he could go with her, and it would be all okay. And so they spoke to my mom. And then, so we had a cleaning staff come in to his room shortly before my friends showed up, and the whole room had been cleaned, mopped, all of that, you know. And in one occasion, I went in there to talk to him, and there was a penny on the floor. And I went, yeah, if you've ever heard the story Pennies from Heaven, you know, and I'm like, it was a shiny copper penny. And I am just like, all right, wait a second here. And I'm like, okay, did anybody drop change in my dad's room? And they're like, no, we don't have change in our pockets. There's no change. We don't have purses. It's not, you know. And I'm like, they were just in here and cleaned. You know, I looked at the floor and this penny's from heaven. I'm like, well, that's my mom. She was just here and now there's a penny, right? But when my dad passed away, I was holding his hand and I actually felt the moment. I don't know how to say it other than that, but you hold somebody's hand, you just, you know, tell him it's okay. He looked at me and he put his hand away. He started applauding and he mouthed, "Good job." And I said, "Good job? You mean me?" And he nods his head, looks at me, he goes, "Love you, good job." And I went, "Oh, he's applauding me," you know. And then he passed, and I had to wait a long time for them to pick him up. Even though they knew, and I called right the minute it happened, they said they'd send someone immediately, but they didn't. So one of the things he asked me when he was getting ready to zip up the little bag, and he says, "Would you like to kiss him goodbye?" And I was like, in my head, I'm going, no. Would I look weird if I said no? Yes? Should I? I guess I should. I already did. Should I do it again? You know, all this stuff is going in my head. And what was really interesting about, I decided I was going to because I, as a personality, Janet, need to look good to other people. That's just who I am. So I decide I'm going to do it. So I kiss him on the lips. But what was interesting about that is that I really became clear that that's not my dad. It was very much a shell. There's no other way to describe it than that was a shell, which made it very interesting spirit wise because then you have the conversation with yourself that's like so bizarre to think that the skin on my body, the voice, the timbre of my voice, the sound of my voice, the thing that makes my voice is coming out of a shell. You know, it's kind of a bizarre concept if you think about it, that the spirit that's inside of you is different for every single person. And it's kind of awing when you think about it. There's so many different personalities that habit these shell bodies. There's no other way to explain it other than a God moment because it's God creating all the different people you see in front of you housing shells. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
It's a bizarre concept.
Because your body isn't you.
Right. Exactly. That's when you become like, you know, fat, thin, color, you know, whatever it is about that person, what's inside of them, that's them. So, you know, that's where you always can start from, or I try to start from a place of good on people. Is it like, what circumstances are causing this person to be this way at this moment? Because somewhere in there, the original spirit was a blank canvas, so to speak. But you know, it's just bizarre moments like that it's not necessarily a paranormal thing or something like that. It's just like realizations, I guess, when you talk about God moments. Some of that is realizations, like, you know, realizing that concept at that moment. And then there's the bizarre things that happen where, you know, I told my dad before he passed, I said, you know, Dad, I'm going to be okay. I really want you to just reach out, take Mom's hand. You know, it's going to be okay. It's good, you know, and I said, and if you can send me a sign, that would be awesome. But if you can't, I still believe it's all good. So I'm pulling away. It's kind of actually, this part is a little bit comical. I said, I waited this long. Can you just wait a few more minutes? and I'll go to the house and got in the suit and that kind of thing. And he says, well, how about if I just follow you? And I'm like, okay. So here I am driving down with my dad's body following behind me in a van, which is a bizarre thing, right? Okay. So I'm like going, okay. The phone is connected to Bluetooth, which plays music immediately on my phone. And I kind of didn't want to hear the music, I'm not in the mood. So I went to turn it off. But the moment I went to turn it off, up comes, and my phone's always on shuffle. And up comes the beginning of Prince's song with the organ music. It's like, dearly beloved, we're gathered here today. And I'm like going, oh, wow. Okay, that's weird, And so I listened through that song and go, oh, there's my sign. My dad made it, So I pull in my driveway. The van pulls in behind me. I go, he pulls in one part of my driveway, and I go in the house to get everything and bring out to him. So my mail carrier, who had spent, Becky was her name, she had spent countless time on my front porch talking to my dad. They had a cute little relationship when she delivered mail. He was sitting on the front porch. They'd have a little conversation. She's a really nice person. And she happened to be training somebody this one day while the van is sitting in my driveway. So first of all, the timing of this is bizarre. I bring my dad's clothes out. I see her and I'm going, oh, and so she walks around. First of all, he opens up the side of the van while she's in the back of the van. So, and I hand him the clothes. We're having a little conversation. She's waiting for us to finish talking. But the whole time he has the van door open, and you can see, the whole neighborhood can see a gurney and a body in there. And I'm sitting here going, close the door. It's shut the van door. And he just is sitting there listening to now our conversation with me and Becky. And I'm looking between him, trying to telepathically tell him, shut the door. And now I'm talking to her. She leans on the side of the van directly opposite my dad's body. And she said, so how's your dad doing? And I go, well, he passed away, Becky. And she says, oh, and she's still leaning in the van because she's a talker and she likes to talk a long time. And she said, I'm telling her, and in short snips what, he had passed away this morning and everything. Meanwhile, she's just leaning against where my dad's body is. Oh my gosh.
This is a sitcom. This is a sitcom episode. This is like the Mary Tyler Moore episode when everyone's you're dying over this,
So this guy finally shuts the door. Thank goodness, because the whole neighborhood can see. I'm going, oh.
Did you ever say to her say hi to Dad? Did you ever even?
No,
couldn't do it.
Because I just decided not to do that because I thought that would really be freaky. And she had this intern with her behind her, following her like a puppy dog. And I thought, no. So that was all fine.
Jeez. How's your dad? Well, he's kind of down and out, but
And happen to be leaning right next to him right now.
Say hi. Turn to your left. Say hi.
Yeah, would you like to say hi?
Yeah.
That's for Dad. Anyway, so, those are just some of the things. I mean, I've had other things happen throughout from my mom in the past, how cardinals show up at the times when you may need a little bit of a hug or something,
Red Cardinals.
Yeah, Red Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
And I read, after my mom passed away is when I really got more attuned to it because I was with her when she passed away, and I was looking for the answer to something that happened. When she was passing, my dad had to go to the bathroom in the worst way right at a critical moment. And he's like, I don't want to leave. And I said, well, Dad. And he goes, but if I don't, I'll pee my pants. And I go, well, go, but come back quick, And he's like, I don't know what to do. And I go, I think you should go, And he goes, oh, okay, I'll be right back. She did pass. I mean, the minute he left, she passed. And so we made a decision to leave the machines on until my dad got back. And to this day, he never knew, till his death, he never knew and never has known that she passed ahead of him coming back, because we all waited for him to come back for a minute. And I looked at the nurse, she looked at me, and I said, yeah. And she looked over him and said, Huntley, she has passed. He goes, just now? And she goes, yes, just now. And he's like, but, and I've never seen my dad bawl so hard in my life. I've never seen my dad cry. And he cried hard. And just before she passed, she looked in the corner of the room and her eyes got huge, like large. I've never seen eyes so big. And her pupils were super dilated. And I actually looked up in the corner and I'm like, what's she looking at? And I got in front of her face like, Mom, what are you looking at, Mom? Like that. And I'm kind of in her face, but she like right through me. Like she couldn't even see my face. She was going through me. So I went to, after she passed, and this is at Christmas time, presents under the tree. It was really difficult. I stayed with my dad all the way through New Year's. I went to Borders Books and I was looking for an answer. And the answer was, what was that? What was that happened there? And I got 2 books off the shelf. One was How We Die. I can't tell you the name of the guy now, but that's the title. And the other, the most moving one, the most insightful one that I got was Final Gifts, GIFTS. And it was written by hospice nurses. And it's all about the experiences that they had as hospice nurses and working with different people, almost like chapter by chapter of like, somebody has Alzheimer's, this is Alzheimer's chapter. And, I read it from cover to cover. And it took me very short time to read it. It's a short read. It's a really engrossing read. And they've done another version since it's updated, and then some other things that they've done. But there's where I became really aware of signs and communications. And so in reading that book, I was able to really discern a lot of things for my dad's dying that I didn't know for my mom's dying, but was able to recognize in hindsight for things that she went through. And I'm like, oh yeah, she did that. And oh yeah, that happened, And so it's sort of, to me, that book was sort of like, there's no coincidence here. How can you not believe when there's so many people that don't even know each other all over the world that have similar experiences? There's something to it. You know what I'm saying? If you don't have faith, you just have to look at that and you're going, there's too many coincidences to not have that be God in the works. Do you know?
Absolutely. And I think this is God's kindness that you don't even have to have faith. You're right. Just your logical mind says, oh,
right.
It's just right there in front of your face. And I got to tell you, your kindness in wanting that it would crush your dad to come back in and say, well, yes, while you were peeing, way to go, Dad, you couldn't hang on. And then I wonder if it wasn't your mom's sense of humor going, I don't want him to see this. I mean, who knows? Who knows?
Well, one of the things I picked up in that book was that sometimes, or they can't say 100% of the time, but sometimes the people passing away wait till the person they love the most leaves the room in order to pass away.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't want to burn them or in their head, or they don't want to be a burden.
Then there are other people who will hang on until you're in the room so that you can have that.
That's the other side of it. They really want that person to make it back, like that brother, that sister. There's a lot of instances of that someone's hanging on until their son gets there. He's flying in from Germany. He's coming, Mom, and she'll hang on until the person from Germany gets there because they haven't seen them. Or maybe there's something unresolved there that you need to resolve before they can pass. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. But again, it's every person is an individual. Every situation is individual. But there was a lot. I mean, I highly recommend that book, Final Gifts. And I've given that. Our friend Sue, when her husband was going through what he was going through, she read the whole thing on that weekend. And she called me and said, oh my gosh. She said, this explained all the things I've been going through in the past couple weeks. She said, thank you so much for this book.
I want to go back to when your mom and those wide eyes looking off on the upper corner and all that. Did you read what Steve Jobs said right before he died? He's got a room full of people. I don't know if he was also one of those people where He's kind of like out of it. As I remember, wasn't it pancreatic cancer? Is what I'm thinking.
I don't remember, but yeah, something like that.
But anyway, he had this, obviously this lucid moment right before he passed. But interestingly, he looked towards the door, as I remember reading it, towards kind of like a doorway, past people. He's got people all around him.
Past people.
He's looking past people, looking to the doorway, and 3 times he says, "Wow, wow, wow." And then he died.
Oh, yeah.
And then he died. So he was seeing something. He's seeing, and whether it's deceased loved ones or angels or a little bit of heaven or whatever it is,
right?
It's just, and as I look at it, that wasn't just for Steve Jobs. That was for everyone in the room to witness that there's something else.
Yes, there's something else. Exactly right. By the way, I never got the answer, as you would say. He said, "Wow," and no one really knows. So I never did get that answer on my mom. And interestingly, I had a conversation with a TV rep whose mom had passed away. And we were having a conversation about the last, I would frequently refer to my dad's experience, and we were laughing. And so, he, without me prompting him, said, there was this one thing that happened just before she died. And it was the same exact thing about the wide-eyed thing. And he goes, "I really want to find the answer to that." And that's when I was able to relate to him about the book and, whatnot. And I said, but in that book, Dan, there's not really the answer that I could find. And I said, so anyway, again, it happened to me, happened to Steve Jobs, happened to Dan, the friend I know at the TV station. I mean, again, it comes right back to the, even if you are questioning faith, all you got to do is look at a pattern and other people experiencing it. And, it's logical. It's just logical. You know what I mean?
Yep. Requires no faith. There was I read an account of a young girl, and I'm thinking she's single digits, it could be 6 or something, just to kind of give you a visual of this, and she was dying. And, it always kills us, obviously, when we see a young person die. It just, that's unfair. You want to, and it's like, not to God. He's looking at it much bigger than we are, and eternity is eternity versus a few years we have here on earth. But this girl was passing, and her parents were in the room, and they're having this kind of like final conversation, and then she said, "Oh, I have to go with him." And who's him? Jesus. He's standing over there in the corner. I have to go with Jesus. And it's like, who knows? Maybe Steve Jobs saw Jesus. Maybe your mom saw Jesus. I mean, it's the kind of thing that sure would make your eyes pop and say, "Wow."
Wow.
Maybe maybe they showed up for that. But something was there that was exciting.
Exactly.
That was very, very exciting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ain't God good? Ain't God? Well, you've been touched many times. I mean, just with your parents alone, you've been touched beautifully, Janet. You really have.
Oh, I think I have, definitely. I'm certainly blessed. I was their miracle child, so to speak. I wasn't a miracle, meaning they had me, but I was adopted, and they were told they couldn't have kids, so I was the adoption kid. And I'm an only, but and so I was my mom's, sewer and cooker, and I was my dad's sports person. And I know I was loved for sure. I know I'm blessed. I mean, I'm still going to. I've actually found my way back to my traditional Lutheran church, but pretty much the same. All the stuff I used to complain about, which is the from the Catholic side, all the standing and kneeling up and down and the repeating of the phrases and all of that. I used to be like, and so like, again, Lord, hear our prayer. Lord, hear our prayer. Gosh, I got it.
Yeah. Why are we doing this again?
Why are we doing this again? Can we just like summarize at the end and have like one big Lord, hear our prayer, and just kind of, so, but nowadays, and I think it was my mom's passing. I think it was my dad's passing, and that new awareness of all of this for me, or maybe a reaffirming of what I knew when I was little, and then you forget. Now I find comfort in the traditional sense of my church that I grew up in Lutheran, and also the pastor is like fantastic, and which is another key thing for me, is that I really appreciate someone who gives a great message and ties it into real life and very practical. And I'm going, yeah, that applies, versus something that's more like out there, all biblical, but no like application, So, and he always has a little humor, which is fun. And really it's the pastor for me, but and so people are like, well, haven't you been to the contemporary service? I'm like, no, not really. And they're like, well, we think you'd like that. I'm like, maybe not so much so.
Like, I like this.
Yes, I look young, but
Yeah, I like
this. I kind of like this.
I like this. I feel comfort here. I'm back home again. Yeah, you got a good one there. You got a good one.
I do. His name is Pastor Walter Still. He comes from PA. He's kind of a cool guy. On Super Bowl Sunday, if the Steelers are in, he wears his Steelers shirt over his robes.
Yeah, something you don't see a priest do. Not too much. Not so much.
Not so much.
That's great. This has been great, Janet. Thank you so much
you're
for
welcome.
this. All right. Thank you, Janet. And thank you, Gary Anderson from Night Dreams Talk Radio. Thank you for listening. Would you like to be a guest on the show? Have a story to tell? Let me know at touchedbyheaven.net. Contact me at touchedbyheaven.net. Love to talk to you. Oh, a little reminder also, 3 o'clock every day, it's God Bless America, God Bless the World. Powerful, powerful prayers are said at that time. Joining together, 3 o'clock your time, God Bless America, God Bless the World. Thanks for your help financially through Patreon. Just go to touchedbyheaven.net and become a patron. Thank you so much. I will see you next week for more of Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack.